Thanks for everyone being here. I know Matt is otherwise tied up, but our super boss here, Rob, is going to run the show, and I'll let him take it away.
Thank you all very much indeed. And I brought with me a guest, and that guest is Bill Ott. And so, as this is cyber, his abbreviations of bot, it's absolutely appropriate, right? So, Bill is with First Watch ostensibly. He has an exceptional background in cybersecurity, in the dark web, in all things of this nature. He has a fascinating background, and what we're going to do today is there's no slide deck. It's going to be a sort of free flow discussion. Bill and I have actually been on a police webinar, an EMS webinar, and general other discussions on this topic. So we're just going to sort of recreate that. And obviously it's free flow. So if you have any questions, observations, etc., that's the way we'll run it. But Bill, give us your amazing background, mate.
Well, for the last 4 years, I have been working at First Watch, and I'm in charge of all things cybersecurity there. And that entails primarily managing our firewalls, managing our VPNs, and managing our LAN or network connections. I also assist the integrations team and our project management team with various security issues that come up in questions, basically, as we're setting up new clients. I have been a paramedic since 1984. And I've been a EMT since 1981. And going back beyond First Watch, I have spent considerable time with special operations, military special operations, and with military aviation. So that's it in a nutshell.
What are you flying in your spare time for a good cause?
My favorite thing to fly is the Gulfstream 550.
So, man about town, literally. So, thank you for coming in, Bill. So, as we've discussed before, obviously you've got a great group here of very senior leaders from actually around the country from our association. So, if you had to define the sort of the super risk, we probably know the answer to this question, but obviously you are the man that's monitoring this for First Watch and obviously for other organizations. What's the risk state, the DEFCON right now?
At the moment, if you wanted to put it at a DEFCON level, I would say it's at DEFCON 3. There's a lot of bad activity happening on the internet. Public entities, the government entities, medical institutions, educational institutions, are all just being hammered with various attacks. And unfortunately, public safety falls into the attack scope quite frequently as well. The bad guys know, the bad actors know, particularly with EMS, with an EMS record, you get a patient's name, a date of birth, an address, social security number. You get all the magic pieces you need to then create essentially a false digital ID and be able to obtain credit cards, take out a loan, that sort of thing. On the more strategic level, looking at things, we are being hammered primarily by 4 countries: Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. Iran and Russia work quite a bit together with their cyber attacks. China and North Korea do a little bit together, but basically they stay pretty isolated. Of all 4, the Chinese are the most active, far and away. At First Watch, we have 3 data centers and the headquarters office building. Between all of those, we average now between 75,000 and between 75 to 85,000 attacks per 24 hours against us. And that's probably 90% nation state, 10% are organized criminal gangs of some sort, primarily out of the Russia area. Frequently, they're hidden in Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, those sorts of places. A lot of them are former Soviet engineers that have good computer skills but have no job opportunities. So they basically have turned to crime, if you will, in order to make money. So in the big scope, that's what we face is 10% are organized criminal groups. The rest is nation state. And I was asking Rob before we got started if we talk about this just purely from a business standpoint or a personal standpoint, this impacts you both ways. You have business related risk with these threats. You also have personal risk, particularly from not the nation state actors, with the exception of China. China wants into your computer. The others don't care about it that much. But the criminal gangs, the 10% of the organized crime hacking that goes on, they're very interested in getting into your computer to access bank accounts, passwords, or even just to be able to utilize your computer as a slave or a bot in an organized attack against other entities. This denial of service or distributed denial of service, where hundreds or thousands of computers are instructed to attack another computer or another address at a specific time in a specific way and take that computer offline. That's what happens when you see AT&T or Amazon or Netflix or whoever the target of the day is go down. Frequently, it's because they've been hit by a distributed denial of service attack by one of these criminal elements. So that's where we are. The risk. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just to say, it's going to drill down into something you said there, because even Merg's head looked up when you said the amount of daily attacks coming onto your system. Now, of course, is it because you're a data company and you have so many sort of portals and
Right.
points of entry, as it were, or is that something that everyone should be aware of, that they're potentially getting the same level of hits towards their system?
If you are a public safety agency, a healthcare institution, a government agency, or who am I missing? Healthcare, public safety, government, education. That's pretty much it. If you're one of those entities, you likely are seeing very similar numbers attacking you. I mean, they just hammer nonstop, bam, 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 and what they're trying to do let me talk technical, but I'll make it very simple. What they do is they send misconfigured data packets. Instead of normal data packets coming to your firewall, they will send misconfigured packets, and they try to trick your firewall into opening a port. And if they can get a port open, then they try to jam that port open. And if they get that to happen, then they can get in and out freely of your network. And if they can get into your network for just 10 or 15 minutes, they can then implant a piece of software that sits hidden on your network that calls home, every 20 minutes, every hour, whatever it may be, to get instructions. And because it's coming from within your network, typically your firewall is going to allow that traffic to go out and come back in. So that's what these bad actors want to do, is they want to jam your firewall up and trick it and get in and plant something. That's the prime goal. The other thing that they like to plant is ransomware. And the ransomware, we've seen it actually taper down a bit. It was much worse in 2022, 2023 than what it is right now, but it's still out there. And by all indications, it's looking like it's going to start ramping back up again. The Russians in particular are really starting to push out some newly designed ransomware. Works a little bit different than what we've seen in the past. And I have firsthand experience with several cases, but the one I'm most intimately familiar with is here. I'm in Cary, North Carolina. I'm between Raleigh and Durham. I've been affiliated with Durham County EMS here for 40 years, something like that.
Actually, let's talk about the Durham ransomware attack in a second. First of all, of course,
Okay.
we all know the Russians now have to refinance their air force, so that's the first thing. But you've got a number of chief executives on the call right now. So what's the one email they need to send to their head of IT, their head of whatever they have that's in charge of the computers right now? What's the one question they need to ask straight away to get some assurance that everything is good?
Well, the number one thing is you need to be able to look at your logs. Somebody that knows how to read logs that are generated by firewalls somebody needs to look at those. And it's much like reading an EKG, essentially. If you look at them day after day after day, and you look at the trends of what's happening, what's hitting you, what's sticking to you, where it's coming from, you learn what normal looks like. And in my case, I've got two big screen monitors, two big 60-inch monitors up, where I watch all of our network traffic, and I can just eyeball it and look at it for a few seconds and tell whether everything is normal or not. And when you look at normal long enough, abnormal jumps out at you. So I would say the absolute most important thing is that you're logging things and that someone that understands those logs is reviewing them. That's the number one thing. The number two thing just below that is that you have adequate firewall protection, that you're using professional level subscription supported firewall technology. And if you're a big enough agency, you probably want double firewalls. You put one out at what we call the perimeter, that's an edge firewall or perimeter firewall that just beats off the low hanging fruit. Then the more serious stuff comes in and is managed by your interior firewall. But all of your firewall appliances, all of your switches, all of your routers are capable of generating logs. Those logs should be captured, and somebody should be reviewing those, if not daily, certainly every other day. And you become familiar with what normal looks like. And then if something weird happens, it sort of jumps out at you. Plus, you then also have, if you're capturing these logs and you're just storing them. We try to keep 13 months of all of our logs live and available to us. And we back that up offline. So if we were to get infected, our logs don't get screwed. The FBI likes to have a year's worth of logs if you have a major event. So that way you can go back in time, literally packet by packet by packet, and see where a breach occurred or where something funny occurred, and then you try to trace it down. And if you're not capturing those logs and keeping them, you can't do that.
Excellent. So we'll talk about, I say, the Durham ransomware attack is something that I'll ask Bill to talk about in a second. Question for you guys out there, though. Everything that Bill's just said, is that something that you are doing that has a resonance? Your IT leads are reporting back on this. Is it language that you're familiar with that Bill was just discussing? It'd be interesting to see if that's something that, what's your level of knowledge on this topic?
My level of knowledge is enough to know that I have no level of knowledge. That's why, we very much rely on outsourcing. Like we're doing all kinds of stuff, penetration testing. We're doing all sorts of, like phishing emails, training, like with individual people. But I am very much reliant on the firms, and I think it's more than one, that we outsource to tell us that they're doing the right thing, right? And then how do you audit the firm that's doing the audit, right? Because we're completely, and we have a pretty big outfit in terms of IT wise. We got 5 or 6 IT folks on staff, and but we know that outsourcing the vast majority of that to true cybersecurity experts. But what should we be doing to monitor them?
Right. That's a good question.
Chip, you came off mute for a second there. Were you going to comment?
Yeah, I followed everything that Bill said. The DDoS attacks I'm familiar with when it kicks me out of the World of Warcraft. Just saying. And
we had a Counter-Strike server one time here, Chip. The Counter-Strike fell out of favor though, so they stopped playing.
Right. And yeah, but yeah, it's really annoying when you get a DDoS attack. But I did bring along my IT guy, Christopher. if he has any comment, if he's really there or just placating.
Is Christopher here? Christopher Wishart.
Yeah.
As
Sorry.
I live and breathe. How are you, mate?
There we go. Hey, good. And yourself?
Oh, fantastic. I get to work with this handsome group of individuals here, so it's always good. It's always a good day. Chris, over to you, mate.
Oh, nice. I'm familiar with what you're talking about. We do track logs. We're trying out some stuff with our Sonic Wall to automate some of that threat acknowledgement, so that we're not having to spend as much time as you're talking about just staring at it. But I haven't really figured out exactly whether or not I'm comfortable with it, but it's definitely something we're using, and we are staying with the latest and greatest hardware with redundancy. Haven't done the edge thing, but if you talk to the vendor, they'll tell you that that's not as necessary from their perspective. So individual mileage may vary, but no, everything you're talking about is absolutely pretty much the norm. But I think it's been the norm for a lot longer than people are talking about.
Yeah.
I realize that there's much bigger emphasis right now on this, but this was happening 10, 15 years ago too. No problem at all. I mean, it's been that way forever. So you're either on it or you're not, and we have a tendency to have been on it this whole time. But at smaller shops, obviously, probably have a much harder time. And I don't have a good answer for how you audit the auditors, because at some point you just have to hope that with layered security, you've got enough layers in place. There's nothing foolproof, and that's important to remember as well.
Yep, very true.
I think that's a takeaway point here. How do we as senior executives audit those auditors? How do we know what we're getting is wholesome? Think about that for a second. So we talked about Durham. So Durham had a massive ransomware attack. Bill was intimate with this. We had a separate webinar on this topic. So Bill, why don't you talk about that? And then obviously two things, the sort of internal wranglings of what the hell do we do now? And then of course, do we pay or do we not? And then what do we do next?
Right. Excuse me. The city of Durham and the county of Durham in North Carolina in March of 2020. And in fact, I believe it was March 8th. I'm not positive on that date. It was the Friday night just before the week that COVID blew up. That Friday night, all of a sudden, things in the 911 center was the first indication. Things started not working right. Connections weren't being made, tones weren't going off. Workstations ultimately were locked up and started displaying a message. And very quickly, and this was late on Friday night, this is like 10, 11 o'clock on Friday night, rolling into early Saturday morning. So of course, no IT people are there working. Very quickly, these messages and this problem spread throughout the city and the county, throughout the networks, for everybody, social services, fleet maintenance, radio maintenance, you name it, everybody, all of a sudden started getting hit. And they locked the county down and the city. I mean, they were locked up. Everything reverted back to pencil and paper. I'll tell you the end story is that it took nearly a year. It was at the 12-month mark before every single thing was back up and operational the way it had been prior to the attack. But the 911 center operated for the better part of 2 weeks, back with pencil, paper, and little models of the trucks moving around on a map that they put on the floor. I mean, that's how basic it went back to. Now, why it happened, Durham does a reasonably good job of maintaining their networks and trying to keep up with security. But because it's a city-county combination, some things they do very well together, other things they don't. Well, the sheriff's department had a specific group in the sheriff's department that wasn't happy with how they were being firewalled about something. So they put in a cheap little router on their own, consumer type router, so that this one department could get out and didn't have to worry about the normal firewall rules. And that is what bit them. Somebody picked up on the MAC address, the media access control address on that device when they were just scanning networks, knew how to defeat that device. They defeated it, planted ransomware on the network. They actually put it on about 3 days in advance, and they had it set to detonate basically at 2200 Eastern time on Friday night. And if that wasn't enough, then Monday the world goes crazy with the COVID stuff and everything shuts down. And it was disaster on top of disaster. And it took, a professional company coming in. Fortunately, Durham had good backups of most everything, but not everything that they needed. So they did lose some data in a couple of areas. They were able to get the non-public safety stuff back up relatively quickly. I would say within 10 days to 2 weeks. But it took the 911 center and the public safety agencies anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks out to about 3 months to get 99% of their stuff back. But at the 911 center, there was some specific thing they had that went on there, and I'm not exactly sure what it is without going back and reading the after action report. But it took them 12 months to get that operational again. So it was a devastating attack. The attackers wanted $5 million. And very quickly, the city and county jointly, in their emergency meetings on Saturday, decided that they were not going to pay this. The FBI encouraged them not to pay it. And they decided they could rebuild off of their backups and make things go. And they did. But they learned a lot of valuable lessons along the way about what type of backups to keep, whether they're online or not. What really saved them and has saved other agencies are like hourly snapshot backups that connect to the network, back things up as they are for this hour, and then disconnect. And the reason they disconnect is so if the network does get infected, that backup doesn't get infected. And it was those snapshot backups primarily is what saved them. And that's what typically has saved most other agencies that have suffered severe ransomware attacks.
So, discussion point, who has cyber insurance? All of you out there? Pretty much.
And there is tremendous discussion in the security world about the cyber insurance and the technicalities of what they will cover, what they won't cover, when they deem something your fault. I don't know if you keep up with that, but there's lots and lots of discussion right now, has been for the past year, about the parameters for this type of insurance. So it's very important that you stay on top of exactly what you have covered and what your responsibilities are to be sure you remain covered.
Excellent. So any sort of general questions for Bill? Obviously, Bill has a extensive background in this, and so any specific questions, any sort of confirmatory questions that you have for him based on what you're doing, and also, right, also Charles, obviously you're a hospital system, so you are at the end of the line in terms of policy procedure and making sure that, and obviously the easiest person to blame therefore when it all goes terribly wrong as well. But I'm sure it's exceptionally challenging for a hospital system. I know that Scripps over here in California had a whopping ransom attack on them, and I'm sure they paid a fortune for that. But again, so questions and hospital issues, Charles, as well.
Well, I think the biggest thing, and we just had an incident of it happen here, is making sure that your backup has a backup. So we had a backup data center in Fort Mill, South Carolina, and it went down last week, which basically threw a loop in some of the systems around here, but they now have a backup to that backup center. So in just in 1 week's time, they learned another lesson, another level. We actually have, I think, 3 levels of firewall, as you would find it. We have, our system is set up, and also we have a DMZ, which is like another level of firewall. Right. And then we have the ICE server as well. In fact, it causes headaches. I mean, right now, the laptops, if they're not used in 45 days, are taken off the system. Good. And so if I've got spares sitting on the shelf and the spares that sit in the back of the truck, if the crews don't do what they're supposed to do and touch them every so often, it won't allow it to be used on the system. So basically, it's like a theft protection. That was one of the things that Bill probably remembers it many years ago. Wake County left a laptop laid on a stretcher, and it
Yep.
had everybody's social security number on it because that's how they logged in back then. And theft of a laptop can allow someone to access your system. Luckily, ours are pretty tightly locked down, but you know, your devices that you allow stuff to use. One of the things that we've had a big issue here, we had a lot of staff that want to use their personal devices to do Pulsera, and we did not allow it. Our county CAD, for example, has to be on a company-owned device and go through our security process. Can't use a personal device to run our Freedom app for CAD on it. So a lot of things. I mean, it's great to have the great hospital, huge security department. It's also a pain in the ass when you're trying to get quick things on the EMS
Yep.
side of things. So
Yep.
there's good and bad with it.
Yeah, and full disclosure, Charles and I worked together for a little while in Durham back in the 90s. We've known
Back
each
when
other
Bill
quite a
wore
while.
cowboy boots to work, just so
That's
you know.
right. That's right. I still wear them today.
That's brilliant. Thank you. JP, I'm coming to you. Obviously, you're a large organization as well, and you know, is there anything that you've heard or anything that you're doing that's unique or new?
I don't know if it's unique or new. I put in the chat here a little bit about an issue that we had a couple of years ago. So we actually had a cybersecurity breach here. Thank goodness it ended up being relatively minor, but it did lead us to have to do a full independent review of our cybersecurity and our systems. And so we hired an independent consultant that our county had used in the past when they had a cybersecurity attack. Theirs was much worse. And they came in and essentially they looked at it as from a standpoint of a crawl, walk, run. And we were not even to the crawl point as far as our cybersecurity is concerned. And so to get to step one of the crawl point, they suggested to us that we needed to advance our software system, as well as hire 3 cybersecurity engineers.
Mhm.
3, that's 3 full-time, you know, in our system, government employees at security engineer salaries, which aren't cheap for our, you know, 600 employee operation, which already has 6 full-time IT professionals that work
Mhm.
for us. So we essentially increased our department by a pretty considerable amount. We obviously couldn't do that all at once. And over the last couple of years, we've been doing a new person each year. We just hired the 2nd person a few months ago, and the 3rd person will be hired next year. And their whole job is to come in and do pretty much what Bill is talking about, is looking at the regular, right? What's regular, and making sure that they see what's different before it becomes an issue and helping us catch those things. And we're fortunate enough that at least in our system, our county has agreed to help us to fund those positions. And not everybody has that luxury. And so I'm hoping that this will help us to mitigate those concerns, but I think it's been said earlier that even with all these folks that I'm going to have in here on this, something still could slip through. One phishing attack, you know, there's only so much that they can do, and it's a scary time, and it goes to show you just how much we're under threat all the time, constantly, that we maybe don't even realize.
Yeah, the biggest single threat you face day in and day out is a phishing email. And to be clear, everybody knows what a phishing email is. It's phishing spelled with a PH. And it's an email that's sent to you seemingly perhaps from, you know, a contractor or a vendor or another department that sort of has a sense of urgency about it. Sounds legitimate. You know, you need to click here and look at this. Could you review this real quick type of thing? And they have you. As soon as you click that link, you've infected yourself and potentially the whole network. So it's vitally important to educate people to be super suspicious about email, because the email that's most likely to infect you is an email coming from someone you know and trust, because they are compromised and they don't yet know it.
We've had that exact thing where we had an employee who clicked on a phishing link, And then the person on the other side of that, whoever, wherever they were, then was able to essentially assume the identity of that employee
Mhm.
and then send what looks like a totally legitimate email to a whole host of
Right.
employees, because now they have access to your whole email system, and say, hey, we have a problem with your direct deposit or whatever. Please
Right.
click on this link and give
Mhm.
us your bank account information so we make sure we get it right. And next
Exactly.
thing you know, you have serious, and that's all it takes is one
Yep.
click from one employee, and they can do
Yep.
it's
Mm.
scary.
So,
And
sorry,
I'm
Bill.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask Merck if he got the $5,000 I sent to his account in Cyprus last week. That would be it. Also, no, I was just
All
going
in
to say,
gift cards, right?
yes, indeed. JP, would you mind putting the job into Basecamp? Would you mind putting the job description for that appointment? Because I'm sure others would be interested in seeing
I don't
how
mind. I don't
how
mind.
you framed that up. I think that would be a useful kind of takeaway. Sorry, Bill, I interrupted your thought there.
That's fine. I was going to say with phishing, that applies not only to you at work, but it applies to you at home. It also applies to your older relatives. If you've got parents or grandparents, whatever the case may be, they tend to be more gullible, and they see something that's formatted perfectly, looks just like their bank. Click here and confirm this. You got to help educate the older folks that you don't want to do that. If something comes from the bank, call the bank on the number not the one that's on the screen there. Call the bank with the number you already know and say, hey, I've got this. It looks like it came from you. Did you send this to me? In my opinion, I think the banks and credit unions are failing. I think they could do a much, much better job in stopping this out and out theft, if you will, where they convince people to go buy gift cards or to deliver cash to somebody in a super secret undercover sting. I have a friend here in Raleigh, my age. We went to high school together, good friends, but he's not very technically savvy. And he got skunked into this thing about 2 months ago and gave away $72,000 in cash in 6 different trips to give to somebody. And he finally called me on the second day and said, I think I might be messing up here. Yeah. And so we got the police involved, got the FBI involved, but the money's already out of the country. There was nothing we could do about it.
Excellent. So another survey kind of question that I know that Pro uses this. I know that First Watch uses this, but actually to train, keep employees on their toes, there's a program called or system called Know Before, which has education, which has tests, which I think does phishing tests as well.
Yes.
Does anybody else use systems similar to keep their staff pretty much educated and on their toes?
Yeah, that's what we used is Know Before.
Yeah.
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 And man, some of those phishing emails are evil.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're really funny. You read one and you go, man, someone's clicking on this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they are really, really something.
Yeah, Know Before does a great job. They are a very effective use of some security money to help educate your staff. There's no question.
Yeah, and then we really do monitor and make sure that everyone is compliant.
Mhm.
Everybody on the roster, admin, field, everybody is.
Right.
We are back checking and making sure they all complete those trainings. But I got to tell you, it almost feels like checking a box. I don't know how you can have 300 or 400 people, right? And you got a bottom 10%. I don't
Mhm.
care how great your place is, right? Yeah, so you got 30 people that are going to be clicking on that email with thinking that they're doing the right thing. It almost
Right.
seems like, no matter what we do, we're not going to be able to defeat this.
Yeah.
And just so you know that I'm not trying to scam you, I have just sent a link to the Know Before website. So talking of which, actually, there's another tip that I picked up from watching First Watch is that if you are sending something with an attachment, there's actually a requirement to authenticate the email you're sending. And that authentication can be something like, I was just on a webinar with Bill Ott, or we just had a team meeting and somebody said X. In other words, something that only we know that we can relate to before we click on it. And I think that's actually not a bad idea. And I know that First Watch use that extensively with anything that's got a link to it.
Yep. I will tell you this morning, I learned, I attend the federal national security briefing every morning, every weekday morning, first thing. And there is now a group loosely affiliated with some of the street gangs, but they're their own entity that now are hijacking the pay to park QR codes. If you're familiar in a city, you know, you need to park downtown or in the deck, whatever the case may be, you scan the QR code and, you know, authorize it to charge your card or Apple Pay or whatever, you know, $4, $10, whatever it may be. Well, there's a group that's going around and they have made new QR codes that are decals that go over the real ones. And they are now funneling this money into their own accounts. And it's only popped up on the FBI's radar in the last 3 weeks, but they have found this situation in nearly every major city in the US. And, you know, that's very, very troubling because it's organized enough and it's big enough to be covering the whole country like that. So be careful, you know, with the QR codes. They're very handy, they're very useful, but they can be used for very malicious purposes. And along those lines, thinking about payment, something to do personally just for yourself that I highly, highly recommend. The credit union that I use here, the North Carolina State Employees Credit Union, but other banks have the same thing. They have special cards. Here they call them global access cards, but it's a card that's not tied to anything. It's basically just a bucket, if you will, for money. So I can transfer, you know, $200, $500, whatever the case may be, to that card to pay the mechanic or to pay my bills or whatever the case may be. I pay all my bills that way. That way, if that card is compromised, the only thing they can take is what is in that account. It does not link to anything else, doesn't have a credit limit attached to it that they can spend on. It's just like a bucket full of money. And you only put as much money in there as you need to take care of things. And I use that a lot. I have a lot of friends I've gotten to start using that. A lot of work colleagues using that approach. And even if you don't have this specialized kind of card, you can get a very low balance credit card from your financial institution, one say with a $600 limit or $1,000 limit, and that's it. That's all it will do. And you use that to pay your bills or to pay the mechanic or, you know, whoever, pay the plumber, whatever. But that way, if it gets compromised, either somehow from you or the person you're paying isn't very safety minded with the numbers, they get you compromised. You're not going to, you know, be trying to scratch money back from all over the place because it's not linked to anything. It'll only do a set amount and that's it.
So I'm aware we're talking to a fairly sophisticated audience that have hopefully practices and procedures in place to keep the bad guys at bay. But I hope everybody that just having Bill on to just sort of have this discussion may jog some memory. Someone else has just arrived. There we go. But any sort of questions, any questions or thoughts for Bill?
Hey, so yeah, we've been fished, we've been caught, netted, gaffed, whatever. But yeah, I'd say several times a week I get a DocuSign I'm supposed to click on
Right.
out of nowhere. You know, it happens all the time. And you know, someday I'm gonna not sign something and the lights will go off, but
Yeah.
so be it. And my director of finance is forever getting emails from me, you know, dear Brian, you know, please pay such and such, you
Right.
know, love Chip. And but something I've always done, or for decades anyway, is that whenever I end an email, I use a dash before my name.
Uh-huh.
And so far, none of these phishing things that any of my other folks have gotten have a dash in front of the name.
Right.
They know it's not me if it doesn't have the dash in front, I would do dash chip.
Right.
And that, I don't know if that helps, but
Yep. Very good. That's great. That's a great way to recognize. Sure. Very good thought. Um, anything you can do that's reasonable to smooth your security risk is a good thing. The what you're talking about, getting an email from your boss type of thing. At First Watch, we get hit a couple times a year. It's usually around our conference season. Our public facing folks, Todd Stout, the president of the company, Mike Tagman, and our salespeople primarily, they will get text all the time claiming to be one of the others, saying, can you send me some money on Venmo or a Cash App or, this sort of thing. I need some money to take some clients out to lunch or whatever kind of thing. We get those a lot, twice a year. It comes in cycles. So yeah, you have to be super careful about that. And if in doubt, call that person and say, hey, are you, do you need me to do this? Did you really send this? If there's any doubt. Most of the time, there's enough misformatting of grammar or a word not used properly, you can tell that it's fake, or the tone, it's just not that person. But unfortunately, AI is going to change that. I'm dreading the AI as we move along. It's very exciting. It's going to do a lot of good things. I think it's going to do more good than harm. But from a security standpoint, AI is going to make us all crazy because it can generate such elaborate and realistic, what they call deep fake audio and video. You only need 15 or 20 seconds of somebody's voice. And with that, AI can be trained to say anything. So you can type out, a whole couple pages of paragraphs of something that you need somebody to say, and AI can say it, and AI can emulate being them on video. And without some sophisticated tools, you cannot tell it's not real, and it's only going to get better.
So I hope that your next person, JP, is going to have some AI skills then as well as you bring them on board. Sounds like that's the...
Absolutely. Have to in these days.
And what I talked about earlier, looking at your logs, AI is very helpful at looking at your logs. We're doing that now, along with myself and one other person that review the logs, once a day or anytime we have an alarm for something. We're now using an AI tool to look at the logs, and it's been very enlightening what it has found. Initially, it was too sensitive, so we backed it off just a little bit. We've got it just about right now, and it is extremely useful. And of course, it's very, very fast. It can go through hundreds of pages of logs that would take us, hours and hours to go through. It can go through in a matter of a few seconds and give us a synopsis of what it has found.
Super. Well, with 10 minutes to go, Merg, I'm going to hand it back to you to see if there's any other sort of reimbursement stuff. But Bill, thank you, mate. I appreciate your time as always, and you are an absolute font of all things security, cyber. So thank you, mate.
One other thing I would tell y'all: anytime you're on a network that you do not control, use a VPN. Proton VPN, NordVPN. If you're, at a hotel, conference center, whatever the case may be, you don't control that network, you want to use a VPN. And what that does is that encrypts your traffic from your computer or your phone or your iPad out through that network you don't control to some distant point on the internet. Then it drops you on the internet. And that helps protect your information. So we force everybody with First Watch to do that. And we even have some little appliances. I don't know if you can see this thing.
You need to push into the camera, Bill, because of your background.
Okay. Well, shoot. It's about the size of a deck of cards. It's a little firewall device. This one's called a Slate. Slate AX. They're on Amazon. They're about $100, but it's a real firewall, and it also has Wi-Fi. So you can create your own internal Wi-Fi network for your employees to be on if you're at a hotel or a conference center. You're behind a real physical firewall, not just whatever the hotel or convention center is giving you. And it can connect wirelessly. It can connect with a wire. Very, very useful device, and really offers a lot of bang for the buck protection wise.
Is this what we got, Bill? I've got you know, kind of like the big picture question, right? Which is, it feels like we're not that far away from the point where you're probably not even going to be able to insure this risk, right? It might become so prohibitively expensive to buy cyber.
Yep.
We know that whatever we do to try to prevent these attacks, someone's going to be able to beat it. Or there, you know, if you put in the latest and greatest thing from the latest and greatest consulting outsourced people, someone is already working on breaking that.
That's right.
Right? I mean, don't we have a problem here that only Congress can fix? I mean, it just doesn't feel, it feels like we got the Kobayashi Maru here.
Right.
You know, you can't, I mean, you can't defeat this bad boy.
Congress could put some guardrails in place. The United States is way behind compared to like the European Union. They have put together a pretty effective data security plan of how companies have to secure data, how they keep data, what data is shareable, what data is not. They have real fines attached to people that violate these types of things. And they go after the hackers harder than we do over there. And I don't know, you know, I mean, our Congress seems so ineffective, especially at the moment. But yeah, at some point, Congress is going to have to put some things in place. But we act so slowly. By the time they put something in place, it essentially is obsolete. The technology has already moved far beyond it.
I don't know. Scary stuff.
Yeah, but you're right about the cyber insurance, though. It's going to become more and more expensive, and there'll be a lot of places that are priced out that they really can't insure it.
Yeah, it's like, you know, who's gonna be able to, you know, build a house in
California.
yeah, in wildfire land, you know, and you
Palisades.
can't insure, you can't do anything, right?
Right.
It's you know, there's nothing you can do about it.
Right. My contact info is B-O-T-T at firstwatch.net. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, need some advice, shoot me an email.
And that, Bill, is why I never ever open an email you send me, because when you get an email that says from bot at Firstwatch, there is no way I'm opening it. Just saying.
Well, we can't thank you enough. This is obviously this whole session gets recorded and distributed to everybody in AIMHI, and you know, it was a great opportunity for us, and many thanks to you for taking the time to do this with us. A lot more people than us are going to end up ultimately seeing this. So,
okay, great.
Thanks for your time, and thanks for coming on board and scaring the crap out of us.
Absolutely, glad to do it.
Thank you.
Very cool. Any other business, Merg? Big Beautiful Bill, for example? Not the big beautiful bills on the screen, but
yeah, I think we're good. I'm just gonna go like sit on the floor now in a fetal position and just, you know, wait to be attacked. So I think we're gonna call it a day for this one. So thank you, everybody, and again, many thanks to you, Bill.
Sure, glad to. Anytime.
All right.
So looking forward to seeing everybody in, for those that are coming to Lexington, looking forward to seeing you next, 2 weeks time, less than that now. So see you all soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bill. Appreciate that very much indeed, mate.
Sure, absolutely.
And Christopher Wishart, amazing to see you, hear you.
Oh yeah, good to see you. Well, yeah, hear me. Good
Yeah, I
to
can
see
hear you, man. I
you.
can hear you. It's
Yeah.
been a while, but we're coming to Richmond, by the way. We're doing a study tour in October with the California Ambulance Association. So we're bringing a ton of Californians over to visit the East Coast. We're coming to you. We're going to Durham, going to Wake, and coming to Medic. So we'll see you.
Nice, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great to see you when you get
Okay.
here.
Great. And Bill, again, thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.